Hi everybody, it's me. This is Red Beans Recording, and I'm Jeremy. And today we're going to be looking at the ASM Hydrasynth. I just released a pack for this. It's called Ignition Sequence. You can get it if you want. It's 128 patches. It's in the video description. I am going to walk you through some of the fun stuff that I learned while making this pack, because while I was pretty good on the Hydrasynth before, I feel like I'm so much better on it now, and there's some really cool little things that I just kind of want to share with you that I learned. So think of this as a crash course in the Hydrasynth. For those that are familiar with it, you might learn something new. For those who have never used this before, this will be a little fast, but it's sort of a best of kind of thing. I have a whole series on the Hydrasynth available on my YouTube. I'll put a link in the description for that if you want. So let's get into this wonderful, cool synth. The first thing that you're probably going to be wanting to do when you make a patch on the Hydrasynth is pick a sound, and also pick how that sound is played by your keyboard and stuff like that. So we have an oscillator section with 3 oscillators. By default, they all have an individual waveform. So saw, pulses, horizons. There's wavetables in here, and then there's normal waves. We can make this do, wavetable morphing. But for right now, let's just pick a single thing, like saw. Now you notice I have a cool little grid down here, and that's because there's a couple ways that you can constrain the Hydrasynth desktop? Oh my goodness. Hydrasynth desktop specifically to different keys. So if you hit shift, you'll get the ability to change your scale down here. I'm in minor pentatonic right now. And there's different pad modes. So this is a fretboard. This is actually a chromatic key. It doesn't really do anything. So you can change the way that these pads lay out. But also if you go into voice, there's this cool thing you can do where if you hit down a couple times, you can scale lock the entire Hydrasynth patch to a particular scale. So I'll change this to major pentatonic right there. And now with snap on, doesn't matter what's happening on the keyboard down here. I can't play anything except for C pentatonic. If I change this to E, it's E pentatonic. So this is a way to bake into your patch a scale that you might want to play in for a particular piece of performance that you're doing, which can be really, really useful. This also has an effect on something in the Arpeggiator, which is kind of cool. So if I go ahead and make this a bit smaller, turn on the Arpeggiator, turn on latch. So there is what you would normally get if you slam those keys down with an arpeggiated thing on. We go to mode here and change this to phrase. So here how there's a whole bunch of notes playing at once. If I just play one note, see how there's that little bop, 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 bop. So that's a diminished second and a minor seventh. It's going to play that for this phrase no matter what. If I change this to a different phrase, you can hear that this has a scale built into it as well. Some kind of minor scale. But if I go to that voice thing again and change this to a different scale, that phrase is now in major, or in bebop major, or in harmonic major. Change this to pentatonic major, and then you can pretty much just spam whatever keys you want. So it affects the phrases in a very interesting way. And you could even do a custom scale if you want, and just take advantage of the phrase's rhythm. So some of these phrases have rhythm, so now it's just an octave for that. Or you can change it to whatever scale you want. So there's all kinds of interesting things you can do with the voice mode. Some of this stuff over here is cool because what you can do with it is, one, choose between polyphonic or monophonic. Now this is pretty obvious stuff, but polyphonic means you can play more than one note. Monophonic means you can only play one note at once. In monophonic mode, you start getting into the density and detune stuff. So switch this to unison, which is a special kind of monophonic. And now you can get a big density and detune and get yourself a big old supersaw kind of sound in the unison mode here. The thing you can do is play with the stereo mode. So it's going to take every voice and pan them out. Since we're in a unison mode with 8 voices at a time to one note, if I turn this up, you can immediately hear we get this big stereo spread. It's down 2 octaves or 3 octaves. So that's just in the voice settings that we were able to get that, which is really, really cool. So a lot can happen between the oscillator that you pick and the voice settings. You can also use the stereo mode in polyphonic mode as well. If I play multiple notes, it'll pan them around. There's a really cool mode in here called rotate that if I turn on, here are the notes are going to be swirling around. So that's pretty cool. There's a couple different modes here like alternate and random. And if you have more than one oscillator up, it'll affect that as well. But it's like per voice, basically. So of the 8 voices you have access to, that's what's going to go on there. So you can get stereo width, you can get crazy detuning on unison, but you can also get stuff like subtle pitch instability between the different oscillators. So if I turn all 3 of them up and I turn this on to analog feel, see how now we're getting like, see how we're getting pitch swimming around now? So this is where you're going to get your analog feeling from by destabilizing the oscillators that way. And another thing you can do that's in here is this random phase, which is really cool. So you'll see in our little waveform here how I have 3 separate saw waves, all the same pitch. We're getting no variation. It's just 3 perfect digital saw waves. Our analog FL introduces destabilization in terms of their pitch, which creates a very wonderful warmth and sort of smearing there. Random phase changes the duty cycle of each of the waves so that we get random phasing of the waves. So and that's just in our voice section. You can get all kinds of really cool little effects there. Those subtle harmonics. I think it's cool. Okay, cool. So don't sleep on the voice section up here. It can do a lot for you. In our oscillator section, obviously we can change the oscillator type. We can change the semitone so that we can stack different intervals on top and get some classic sounds that way. And we can detune each oscillator separately. If we don't want to do that in voice mode here, we can do it here. And get some subtle detuning, which is nice. Again, detuning is going to make things feel a little bit lusher and richer at the expense of coherency. And then we have our bit crush, which is really neat. It's just like a sine wave, bit crush, on. Get this kind of like electric piano sound almost. I like this a lot for like spacey leads. I like that. One thing I've been doing with these types of leads specifically is introducing a little bit of vibrato. And the really simple way that you can do that is go to the mod matrix and assign an LFO to an oscillator's pitch and turn it up. I only need like 4 at the most. So you can hear that's a lot, right? And then you can go to LFO 3, whichever LFO you picked. Adjust the rate and fade it in. And now you can hear that vibrato is fading in over time. You can actually make this work with the keyboard in a very expressive way by going to Mod Matrix, turning down this relationship here. So make it 0, but take note of which slot you're in. We're in slot 1 of our Mod Matrix because this is 1, 2, 3. Go to your second slot and hit, turn this knob, not hit, turn this to get to polyphonic aftertouch, go down, and then hit Mod Matrix. Now you can affect the depth of this mod matrix slot, or any mod matrix slot, with whatever you put on the top here. In this case, it's the polyphonic aftertouch. So if I turn this up all the way, make sure fade is off, great. The harder I push down that note, the more of that relationship I'll get. So let me dial this back into like 2 or something, or 4 at the most. There we go. Now, when I hit that note down, I introduce the vibrato. So a lot of my polyphonic patches have this built into them because I think it's a really beautiful way to do cool stuff. So using the same thing here, let's go ahead and switch our oscillator mode to the wave scan mode. In wave scan mode, we now get 8 different waves that we can morph between. And I can randomize these by holding down random and going like this. And now if I exit and go to our wave scan, scan through them. So of course at this point, like there's all kinds of stuff you can do with a morphing wavetable. You can turn it down and get like a nasty bass. Especially if you distort it. Go to my pre-effects and add some distortion. Nasty, right? So this is where the beginning of a lot of your crazy ass bass sounds might come from. But it also can be really delicate and pretty too. Generally, if you have a really glassy wavetable sound, you want to drop the semitones down because that'll push the harmonics of the waveform down so that they don't all just sit at like the 8 to 20K range and just be like really aggressively bright. So what we can do with this is go back into like our mod matrix. We could assign polyphonic aftertouch to the wave thing. So polyphonic aftertouch, oscillator 1, wave scan. And now we can polyphonically aftertouch our way through that. I'm going to go ahead and turn our first wave into like a triangle, so it'll be really mellow. So that's pretty fun. Another thing you can do is assign this to velocity, depending on how hard you hit that note. You'll get a different wavetable. You can do this in wave scan mode or non-wave scan mode. Just with wave scan, you get to choose the 8 things that you want to pick, whereas you have a massive amount of wavetables to pick from otherwise, and I'll show you what I mean. If I hit edit again, I showed you I could randomize, but if I hit shift, hold shift, and then turn this knob, you'll see that I start moving in groups of wavetables, and you'll notice the LEDs around the knobs are slowly moving. We just have so many wavetables to pick from, and some of them are in groups and some of them aren't. You can choose what you want. There's a really interesting group of them later on that are just basically the harmonic series, and at that point, you'll just get crazy ass, these ones right here. You'll get crazy ass results just by hitting harder. Go down a couple octaves. It's really, really nifty. I can hit random and just do that. And now I'm back to, I don't know, whatever. Lots of stuff we can do just with picking the right wavetables and sending them through our filters and stuff and choosing, different ways of modulating them. I could put a little tiny bit of LFO on them as well. This is something I like to point out. There are unipolar LFOs and bipolar LFOs. So unipolar are ones that only go like up or down from a particular point, whereas bipolar go up and down. And with this particular control, since we're starting at a bottom slot here, we're down at the lowest value we can be. We want to make sure that we just go up from that. So let's go to LFO 5 and turn off our trig sync and just kind of neat, right? Like you can just get some really, really cool experimental patches or expressive patches this way, and with some filter down and some envelope up. I just like it when something sounds unique, and I like that sharp wavetable sound in conjunction with the filter. And this is just one oscillator. We haven't even included any other ones. I could bring up oscillator 2, turn it to 19. And now we've added that extra layer of pitch on top. If I go to the mixer section and go down, I can change oscillator 2 to go to only filter 2. So you hear that bright wave that's only going to filter 2 here. And filter 2 is really interesting because it's a continuously morphing filter. So I can make this into a bandpass. And if I go back to the mixer and change this to a parallel routing series for the filter, and then add maybe on filter 2 some LFO. turn off the sync on this. I've got an even more interesting sound because I've got 2 filter movements, 2 sets of oscillator sounds, different pitches. It's just really cool. You can get really, really creative with filter routing and mixer routing, and also your oscillator initial waveform, right? If I change oscillator 2 to wave scan, initialize or randomize the wave list, and then go to mod matrix and assign, let's see, envelope 4 to oscillator 2's wave. BPM sync that on, make this a 16th note. So I've just used a looping envelope on the wave scan of oscillator 2. Just like you can get like crazy ass movement. I think it's cool. Let's move on to the mutant section. So this is really cool. The mutant section is where you get stuff like FM and sync and PWM. So let's start with PWM. I think a lot of you knows what that sounds like. I will change this to a square wave or a pulse wave here, the classic PWM. Friend, go to Mutant 1 and change this to PW origin or original pulse width modulation. Turn that up. And we get classic pulse width modulation. You can assign an LFO to depth and get movement that way. But we also have this ratio and feedback thing. Which is doing just some really disgusting stuff. So here's a way that you could get some like really filthy bass lines. Like, what the hell is even happening there, right? That's not what pulse width modulation is supposed to sound like. So that is really cool that there's a sound design ability to do weird versions of even classic things that you're thinking of. Sync is really great on here. Sync is a very classic sound you've probably heard before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this up, initialize this ratio. That metallic kind of sound right there, I guarantee you've heard that in like a Daft Punk song, or I think the Cars used it a whole bunch. If we go to Mod Matrix, assign envelope 3 to Mutant 1 depth, we can get, let's adjust this real quick, we can get that classic sync lead sound. And if you go to voice and change this to monophonic, or unison, so I'll change it to monophonic, we get another option on our not LFOs, on our envelopes. And that is, if we go down, we can turn legato on. And now, as long as I play legato, meaning unbroken notes, it will continue that particular envelope, which is a way that you can get these, pretty neat sounding, solos out of things. And of course, if you wanted to, you could always assign polyphonic aftertouch to that depth as well. And get a little bit more funky control. So that is sync. Sync is a very cool sound, and I think everyone should play around with it. What else do we have? Oh, wave stack. So we did some super saw work earlier. Let's change this to a saw. Wave stack just does it for you. So here's our normal saw wave. Notice that it's perfectly clean. Turn that up and we start to see duplicates of the saw. Depth up and we get a wonderful hyper super saw. If I take that and I pan it, let's bring up oscillator 2 in the mixer section right here to 128 to Mutant 3, which is the mutant for oscillator 2. Turn up the depth. And now you'll hear that I have a big nasty super saw, right? We could even make that nastier by going into unison. Right? Stereo width up all the way. Ooh, I like that. Filter 2, we will make this filter into a notch filter. So morph it into a notch. We need to change the type to no. Now we're starting to get into Reese territory, right? FM is really cool. So if I change this to a sine wave, our Mutant 1 for FM, change this to Oscillator 2, turn the dry wet up. Go to Oscillator 2, make this a sine wave. Come here, sine wave. Turn the semis up till it gets classy. Now we have 2-op FM. Really nice sort of glassy little bell sound. But we can actually do more with this. Obviously, we have a depth control and feedback. But if I go into the mod matrix, turn the dry wet all the way down here. Mod matrix, assign envelope 3 to Mutant 1 dry wet. Turn that up. Go to envelope 3 and turn this into a little... Now you hear that we have a more legitimate FM interaction. So... One thing that I like to do sometimes for longer sounds is I will assign, like, I'll find a mutant here, like this one. So you hear how that kind of makes it aggressive. Actually, I'm going to change this to Oscillator 3 because that one's an octave down. So then I'll go to the mod matrix and I'll assign polyphonic aftertouch to the Mutants 2's dry wet. Turn this up. You hear that? I can press that in now. The Mutants definitely need to be messed around with. You need to have fun with those. Let's talk about the filters real quick. We have a whole bunch of filter types. I do find this to be great. You know, I'm not a filter snob, but like I do like being able to pick between like 12 dB and 24 dB. And then we've got these like, you know, like different flavors like a Steiner-Parker filter, ladder, MS-20. Some of these, like the ladder filter, do the thing where if you turn up the resonance, you lose the bass, and other ones do not. So you can pick whichever filter that you think fits what you're doing. I end up using the FAT24 quite a bit because it just has a really nice aggressive curve to it. And there's a drive, speaking of aggressive, which is really nice. So pick the right filter that you want. I already showed that you can mix and match between the filters. So if I was to go to the mixer, bring in Oscillator 2, hit down and send it to filter 2. And then filter 2, I could set this to a high pass. Now go to the mixer again, hit down, filter series parallel. Now my Oscillator 1, which is like a saw, is going to one filter. And my second filter here, I can do whatever I want with. Change this to wave scan mode. Randomize the list. Turn the envelope down there. Go to your mod matrix and assign like a LFO to the wave scan. Turn it up. Go to that wave. Turn it to random. Just sample and hold. And now what I get here is like I can have a bass sound, but I can also have on top of it this, you know, weird glittery thing, which is pretty neat. The mixer section is where we can mix our oscillators. By default, Oscillator 1 is the only one up here, but we can, by hand, bring in other oscillators, our ring modulation, and noise. Down here, we have the ability to pan our oscillators and send them to different filters. So what I'm going to do is set up a patch that shows you how the mixer section can be used creatively. So what we need to do is pick like a chill waveform. I'm going to pick some sine waves, bit reduce them, just so I can hear this. Sine wave 2, bit reduce this. We'll make this a triangle just for fun. Okay, so I'm going to hit latch. And then play some notes. Turn that down. Okay, cool. So obviously, because the mixer has both of these up right now, we can hear them. I'll turn them down. Whoop. Nothing, right? Amazing. So this is one way you can start getting generative with the Hydrasynth, and I've done some videos on this, but I'll just show it again because I think it's cool. So I will go to LFO3, excuse me, I'll go to Mod Matrix, assign LFO3 down mixer, oscillator 1 volume. Assign LFO4 mixer, oscillator 2 volume. Turn these up, and we hear the LFOs at work. So then I can go to my LFOs and choose how I want them to be. I made a mistake that I'll gladly point out. I want these to actually be unipolar. So I'm going to use the plus version of each one right there. There we go. And let's go to our mixer and pan these so we can really hear this. There we go. Okay, cool. So what do we have now? Well, a very nice flowing little patch where our oscillators are flowing in and out through two separate LFOs. So that's how we can use the mixer section in one way to, have it just kind of flow and make these pretty, cyclical, hypnotic things. Let's add some effects first before I do this. Some reverb. And some delay. I like to use the LRC delay. Dry wet up. BPM sync on. Change this to about half note. There we go. Wonderful. Okay. I'm going to assign one of our envelopes to play with the noise. So envelopes obviously normally trigger when you press a note, and you can tell them to. If you go to the lost part of the envelope here, there's all these trigger sources, which is frankly crazy that you have 4 trigger sources possible for each envelope. But we're just going to do some stuff here by turning BPM sync on, going down one more and turning envelope loop to infinite. And then we'll go ahead and change our decay to a 16th note. Mod Matrix, assign envelope 3 to our noise volume. So, as you can hear, we now have a little noise rhythm. What if I wanted that to kind of like fade in and out? Well, I'm going to take this relationship down to 0. Take note of what slot I'm in, slot 3. Hit down, assign LFO 5 to Mod Matrix slot 3. LFO 5 plus, excuse me, unipolar up. Now LFO 5 controls whether or not that that repeating envelope is bringing in our thing. So let's take this one step further. I'm going to go to oscillator 3, turn it into a sine wave, turn this down maybe all the way to 36. I'm going to go to envelope 4, turn this into a BPM synced envelope loop forever thing, and turn this to a quarter note. So this is envelope 4. Mod Matrix, assign envelope 4, mixer, oscillator 3 volume, and then we have to press a key to trigger it once. Hey, what's that? Kind of sounds like a kick drum, isn't it? Really, all it is a sine wave that's coming in every quarter note because we have this envelope assigned to it. Pretty neat, huh? I think it's neat. I mean, obviously I can play whatever I want. Oh, do you hear how the kick drum just jumped up in pitch? We can fix that. This is where you want to turn key track all the way down, and let's just pick a pitch for our kick drum. Now that thing doesn't care what key we play. So the mixer can be very, 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 very powerful. I showed you looping envelopes. You can have a ton of these, and envelope 2 is already assigned to amp, so you probably won't be able to use that one for modulation. But these 3 can be used to do sequencing, like we just saw, in that you can quantize them, BPM sync them, and infinitely loop them. you can assign that to whatever you want. So for instance, envelope 2 here, BPM sync on, envelope loop forever. I'll make this an eighth note. So that sounds like an arpeggiation, right? All it is, it's a looping envelope here on envelope 2. So if I turn latch on and play some notes, you can hear that the decay of envelope 2, being an eighth note, is looping that volume envelope. So that can be modulated with anything you want. It can be modulated with the ribbon, it can be modulated with another LFO, all kinds of shit, which is really, really cool. Envelope 1, I could loop forever, and I could BPM sync it. This is the one for our filter. So I'll change this to a quarter note, no decay. Turn down our filter. And now you can hear that we have a looping sort of filter sidechain. So the looping envelopes are incredibly powerful, all kinds of different ways. Hey, editing Jeremy, I want to put this little bit in here from the first time I tried recording this video, but my camera was out of focus. This is an example of a similar patch we just made, but I actually went an extra mile, added more diversity to the looping envelope's rhythms, and also did some macro work so I could change the attack and decay, all being synced to time. So check this out real quick, just kind of soak it in. It's a better example of what we just did. The last thing I want to show you are stepped LFOs, because I think this is where a lot of the power of some of the patches that I made comes from. And I just think it's such a cool idea and something that I think is relatively unique to the Hydrasynth. Basically, any of these LFOs can turn into sequencers, and they can be pitch sequencers or they can be not pitch sequencers. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to hit latch and just, here's a waveform. If I go to mod matrix, assign LFO 3, hit down and hit oscillator 1 pitch and turn it up. Oscillator 3 is currently a sine wave. We'll fix that. Let's go over to step. And you can hear it's going a boo-doo. Turn BPM sync on. And now we hear a quarter note, don't we? So we've just turned this into a quarter note step sequencer. I will turn semi-lock on and hit step edit. And here are our steps. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little pattern. Actually, I want this to be a bit faster for our first one. So LFO 3, I will make a 16th note. And I will go to our tempo and turn it down a little bit to 100. All right, LFO 3, down, step edit. So we've just made a pitch sequence that is completely independent of what note we play. Well, I mean, it's transposed by the note right now, but it's like, it doesn't have anything to do with the arpeggiator, it doesn't have anything to do with anything else. It's just that. So we can do, guess what? We can do 3 of these. So let's do our second one. LFO 4 in our mod matrix to oscillator 2 pitch, and you know the deal. LFO 4 step, BPM sync on. Let's make this an eighth note, and semi-lock on and edit, and let's make a patch. Make a patch. I cannot talk. Now, these can be up to 64 steps long. I'm just using 8 now to prove a point. I could make this 9, and it would metrically roll off of our current, which is kind of neat. Let's do that. I like that. Let's bring in oscillator 3. And we're going to make this one a bass. So mod matrix, assign LFO 5 to oscillator 3 pitch all the way up. LFO 5, step. BPM sync on. Half note, semi-lock on, edit. Let's start down at the 4th. There we go. 3 sequences with just LFOs. So now that you're whatever sequences you want, you can do some really interesting stuff with them. I'm going to go into the mixer, turn all 3 of these down, and I'm going to go to macro, macro edit 1, assign mixer 1 volume. Then macro 2, assign mixer oscillator 2 volume, turn it up. And then macro 3, assign mixer oscillator 3 volume, and turn it up. Now these 3 macros represent my mixing of my sequences. You see? Does that make sense? And you can name these macros. So just for clarity, macro assign edit 1. We'll call this second. We'll call this one third. And we'll call this one 4th. Okay, cool. So what else can we do with these? What about our filters? Right now, these are unfiltered wave files. So if I change this to like a saw wave, it's going to be pretty bright. So what if I wanted to use a filter on this? Well, I can. Let's go to the mixer and assign oscillator 3 to filter 2 and change the filter routing series to parallel. Now, oscillator 3 has its own filter that we can change into, let's change it into a low pass filter. There we go. Cool. And then oscillators 2 and 1 have their own filter as well. Let's go ahead and pan those just to make it a bit clear. Let's add a little bit of effects. I like, again, the LCR, turn it up, BPM sync on. Let's go a half note, wet tone up a little bit. This is to get high past it a bit. Reverb, a little bit, lot, cool. So what if we wanted to play with those filters in our macro section? This is where we build our performance. This is the other thing that I wanted to get to, into your all's head, is that this is where you build your performance for these complex patches. So mod matrix, macro assign, macro 5, assign, filter 1, cutoff. Turn that all the way up. We can go down here and call this filter. And then I'll change the list to custom and go over here and just put in a 2 or 1. 2. What am I doing? So we need to turn this into a looping envelope. So let's go ahead and do BP sync on and envelope loop infinite. And then we can adjust this however we want. Now, pressing a key, we'll get whatever value we put here. So that's not bad. What about filter 2? Let's go ahead and assign an envelope to that. How about envelope 3? Filter 2, cut off, turn it up a bit. Now, we'll have to go to do filter 3, BPM sync on, cycle forever, and pick a amount. How about a dotted eighth? And now you can hear we've got that rhythmic relationship there too. So right now I've been pressing very little keys because I've already got a pitch sequence, but what if I wanted to do some basic transposition? Well, if I go into our oscillators here and turn key track off for some of them, then I'll only transpose 1 or 2 of them, or whichever ones still have key track on. In this case, it's our bass. I'm going to reverse that. Bass stays the same. These are going to go up. So you can do some very interesting relationships between your oscillators. Let me show you what I would do with the effects for something like this, and we'll wrap it up. So pre-effects. There's a lot of fun stuff in here. I like in here to mess around with something like the lo-fi, with a clean. You can get a really nice crunchy tone that way. Another thing you can play with is distortion. There's also an EQ that's very, very useful. But my favorite thing that I'll show you at the end here is what I like to do with my post effects most of the time, especially for these sequences. So I'm going to go over to compress, which is a compressor, really useful if you need to rein in a dynamic sound, but we'll make the dry wet 100%. We'll turn the threshold, I don't know, right there is fine. And then I'm going to go where it says sidechain, and I'm going to turn this up before we do this. And I want you to listen to what happens when I turn it to the right and it says BPM duck. Here we go. Hear that? What does that sound like to you? Sounds like sidechain pumping, right? So this has a built-in sidechain pump thing. And what I'll do a lot of the time is attach the dry wet amount to a macro. So macro assign, macro 8, assign post effects, dry wet, 100% up. And then we'll go down here, we'll just call this compress. And now I can add that compression. So what else can we do with this? Well, I can make this track really big if I go to macro assign, macro 7, assign, reverb, time, turn it up. If you turn up this depth knob while you're in the macro area, you'll be able to hear the changes that are going to happen with that macro. So it's very, very useful to preview your macro controls. So you can hear that we've got a gigantic reverb there. I'll probably bring that back a little bit. Okay, there we go. So now I make this giant wash. I can compress it, and I get that awesome pump that would go really, really well with just a kick or a snare. You'll hear this a ton in the preset walkthrough playthroughs that I did. So I think it's just super rad. I recorded this already once before, and I didn't focus my camera, and I knew the moment that I finished shooting that I needed to have focused my camera, and I forgot to do it. So there are little bits that I did better in the first one that hopefully I will maybe put on screen where I really liked what was going on and play those for you. But you'll hear a lot of what's going on here in the pack and the pack videos that I uploaded. If there's anything that you'd like me to dive deeper into, let me know. There's a lot of stuff in the Hydrasynth that's not covered in this video. These are mostly just the things that I reached for a lot because I found them really compelling as tools to do interesting things with the synth in a way that other synths do not, which I hope that makes sense. But thank you so much for watching if you still are. I hope you love your Hydrasynth. I hope that you get a lot out of it. Take some of these ideas and play with them if you haven't. I think they're a really fun way to get a lot out of the Hydra. Anyways, that's enough for me today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Check out the pack if you want. Check out the Hydrasynth playlist if you're looking to learn more about the Hydrasynth, and I'll talk to you in the next video. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Beans Recording, and I hope you have the thing I said already. Bye.